got employees resigning on BBM now. So that is where it comes to. The next important point is grasping IT. A lot of managers today, this institute's not included for a simple reason that all the institutes here have a very good IT lab, and I think there is a IT program that runs parallelly, right? But a lot of other B schools don't have this facility. So a lot of managers, when they end up in a corporate world, are gasping around for IT. And IT is a tool for anything. Like, I'll give you an example. Some time back, you saw how effectively IT was used to catch some of our friends who are sleeping. Similarly, IT, people at the backbenchers in our times when we used to sit at backbenchers, the way to play some mischief was pass around paper chits. Somebody used to sneak in one novel or two. These days, I'm sure everybody is having BlackBerry messengers or SMSing on their mobiles there. As long as there's no iPad inside, I'm fine. So that's where IT is coming to, and that's where it's helping organizations also. But how effectively, as HR specifically and in general managers using it? So what happens if you have technology in the wrong hands? I know, again, I hear lights.
Vom 21. Jahrhundert gehört.
Nećeš dolazi s telefonom?
Jednom da.
Ne?
Hvala.
Ne!
Pošto, neće opet budeš. Hvala.
Like this. So that's what happens if you have technology and don't have the right people to use it. And today, this might be a little bit of exaggeration, but you will still find a lot of organizations struggling with this. The mismatch between the technology available and the people trained to use it. Specifically as HR, there are certain points that keep affecting us all the time. The first one is evaluating early adoption. Of all the functions that you have in an organization, HR most of the times is the last one to accept any kind of technology. Most of the times they'll have answers or issues like legal validity. For example, if you send across a offer letter on email to an employee, to a prospective employee, is it valid? You don't know. If you accept somebody's resignation on an email, is that valid? You don't know. There are similarly various other HR activities that are there which get entangled in these issues of legal validity. So that's why it's one of the issues that it gets slow. Second, there is shortage of very relevant focused applications when it comes to HR. You would have the basic time management software in some companies, you would have modules of SAP doing HR, but that's more or less on a very global scale. Any organization specific modules, applications are really not available as compared to maybe a sales function. Next is the decision making ability. Many a times taking decisions on implementation of IT software applications gets difficult because the decision is not with HR and pending elsewhere in the organization hierarchy. Readiness of the employees. Like I showed you that video earlier. You give the best infrastructure to people and you don't train them. What happens? Complete chaos. There have been organizations in India, if you go through certain websites and see implementation, white papers of certain IT companies or certain organizations that sell software, you will find a lot of organizations have nearly goofed up their implementation strategies because the software was way ahead of what the organization was in terms of people and processes. And the last one, the maturity level of the overall organization of taking that technology to the next level. So these are the issues that you will face when you are implementing the IT part of it. Next is human intervention. Most of HR jobs involve having a human touch to it. For example, when you give somebody a promotion letter, giving it by hand and sending it on email, is there a difference? What is the difference? Personal touch is what you're doing, but where does the difference come in? Somebody said it right here. Motivation. So these, not only this, there are various other things that, as a HR function, you need to connect with employees. So balancing that out is very, very important. I've got organizations where an employee, before he joins, interacts with a portal. So he logs in, he books his own ticket to join duty, he books his own guest house, everything else. As compared to an organization where there is an HR department executive who connects with that guy at the senior level, facilitates him through. The overall experience from people has been that the second option is much better as compared to the first one. Especially because the Indian culture believes a lot in knowing people face to face. We as a culture overall are not somebody who are very apt to, being IT. That's why a lot of online shopping in India is also not taking off very well. A lot of us still like to go, pick up a product, feel it, touch it, and then buy it. The same thing applies for the way we interact with people also. Next, routine activities can be automated. How much of those need to be automated has to be seen. But the second fear that we have here is in most of traditional organizations, you find a lot of people who are holding on to certain jobs and they don't want it to let go. They would be the baby boomer generation or the traditionalists. So they would not let that part to automate. So that would be another concern. And last one is, of course, ensuring that you have a right infrastructure in place to do it. Information curation. With IT happening all around, the data keeps floating. Earlier, what used to happen is the company balance sheet used to be available only to a few. Today, the balance sheet is available on the net. Similarly, in an organization, the sales data earlier was available only to the MIS guy and the sales head and a few more people. Today, that data in the system is available to everybody. Similarly, all your other matrices. What you will use from that, what to use, what not to use is something that's very important when it talks about implementing IT. And as HR guys, I'll give you an example. All kinds of HR data is available today, but there have been IT companies, without taking names again, who cannot even today pinpoint the exact headcount of their own, despite having so much data with them. The next one is validating the information. Because of IT, you have so many access points. Earlier, what used to happen, there used to be a single point collecting data and making those reports. Now, I'll give you a sales example. Earlier, all the reports from branches used to come, let's say in an Excel to a head office. It used to be collated, validated, and entered in the system. Today, with softwares being there, every branch enters its own data, which is then the reports are generated at HO. The problem that I face, some branches, because of the incompetency of the guy, their data is entered wrong, because of which the entire data of the organization goes for a toss. The next one, ensuring right information to right people. Again, because of information overflow, everybody seems to have access to everything, but is that necessary? It can be abused to a large extent also. And the last point, especially for a lot of young managers, is very, very challenging for a simple reason that today, even if you treat a candidate, you keep him waiting for a long time for an interview. I'm giving an HR example because that's what's closer to me. He will go and write it on some post. So-and-so organization kept me waiting for so many hours. You may not get the next few people coming for interview. So any kind of negative feedback, most of us perceive that it's only customers who actually can go and, write about an organization. It can be anybody. It could be your internal employees, it could be an external employees. I've got situations in organizations where our own internal employees, the day they are, having a bad day in office, go and update things on their Facebook. One of my juniors, I can give you an example, my previous organization used to have some very funny comments every 3-4 days on his Facebook page. And then I realized the correlation was the day he gets firing from me or somebody, there is that update. And unluckily, I am on his Facebook. So any kind of negative information that you have will be spread around. So you have to be very, very careful in the way you manage this information going around. Accountability. Like I mentioned again, with data being entered from multiple points, access from multiple points, ensuring that who has access to what, who has rights to what has to be very clearly defined. And synchronizing e-behavior with HR policies. Most of the organizations don't have any kind of HR policy that defines what people should be doing with the IT infrastructure. There would be a few lines saying no surfing personal websites. Some companies may go to the extent of blocking your Facebook and Google, but there is no defined policy on what actions will be taken. What happens if the company email ID is abused and you send information outside? So these kind of things have to be inbuilt in your HR policies and rules. The reason why I am saying this to you is today you guys may not be in a position to understand this, but 6 months down the lane when you're working as part of an organization and these kind of things you realize you can point it out to those organizations. They will correct it. Measuring what is right. Like I said, HR data is across multiple systems here. I would like to highlight the second last point, vanity versus utility. The problem here is in India, a lot of organizations want to say they have this software, they have that software, they are IT compliant, this and that. But for what, when internally their processes itself are not in the right place. So as an organization, the call has to be taken, are you using IT and technology for effective usage, or just to put it in a few ads of yours. Okay, now coming to one of the important areas that we need to talk on, and a very interesting one. What is diversity? Everybody has a pen and paper? Okay, the ones who are sleeping, wake up. Just scribble the definition of diversity in your books. Fast, we'll be collecting those in 5 minutes. I still see people locating their books and pens. Okay, everybody is written? Okay. Does your definition have words like this in there? By experience, I can tell you one thing, the ones who are saying loudly yes sir are the ones who have never written anything. Trust me. Okay, so what is it? Again, when the reason why I did this was to demystify certain things. A lot of us, especially once we pass our MBAs, try to complicate simple things with a lot of jargons. Diversity management is one of them. Sounds good, so we want to use it everywhere. In simple terms, it's nothing. It's range of many people or things that are different from each other. One diversity that we always see, point number one, the gender. You have got age, you have got race, you have got gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation may not be in India for the next few years, and then physical attributes. What happens in an Indian setup? Some of these are magnified. When I say ethnicity, in India it goes to a level of, I have seen organizations where if the department head of a function is of a particular state, 80% of the people under his department will be from that state or speaking the same language. So those are the kind of things that happen. Educational background. Once you get into, jobs, you will find MBAs, non-MBAs. That happens in a lot of traditional organizations. Or it would be premier MBAs, the IIM variety, and the rest of them. And there are a lot of organizations which do this consciously also. But it is there, the diversity always remains. So what happens in case of a language barrier? Let's take an example of a language barrier. I would just like, before I do this ad, you to remember one idea ad which spoke about people from different language backgrounds getting exchanged and all that. You guys remember that ad? Okay. What happens if you are not understanding the dialect or the language? Let's take an example here.
Hier ist das wichtigste Gerät, das Küstenbeste. Das Gerät, das Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Yeah, over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Let me clarify that. Let me clarify that for those for whom it was not very clear. The guy on the other side of the voice is saying that they are sinking, and the German guy is asking him, what are you thinking about? So that happens in case of language barrier, and believe me, it happens a lot in India also. I'll give you an example that I keep remembering. When we came to college, what does Lu mean in North India Hindi? What does it mean to the rest of us in English? That's a simple example.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a proud honor to introduce Mr. Mahesh Kudtarkar, an alumni of Balaji Group of Institute. Sir is a student of pioneer batch of BIIM, which was then known as IIMM. Sir is presently heading the human resource function for Safari Industries India Limited. Safari Industries India Limited is listed on BSE and NSE, and the company behind brand Safari, which is a leading luggage brand in India with more than 35 years of rich heritage. It was one of the pioneers of luggage industry in India and has redefined the way we travel through its various innovations, including ABS luggage and 6-lever locking system. The organization is today on threshold of paradigm shift from being a luggage manufacturer to travel products company with a host new product and renewed focus on needs of today's travelers. Post the acquisition and change of management in April 2012, the organization has undergone metamorphosis including new brand identity and has been growing a pace ahead of present market leaders, making the fastest growing luggage organization in the country. Sir started his career with Tata Motors as a management trainee from campus and later moved to BIIB Industries as Assistant Manager Corporate HR. He was a part of a startup team at RPG Selcom as Zonal HR Head West and South, which built the mobility retail business from scratch before joining Reliance Digital Retail Limited, as wherein he was handling the human resource function for iStores, Reliance Research and later Reliance Digital Retail Business Pan-India. Sir is passionate trainer along with being certified PI analyst and balanced scorecard implementer. He has designed and conducted various training sessions during his tenure with various organizations. He is associated with various management institutes as advisor and guest speaker. Now I request Sir to enlighten us with his knowledge and experience. Sir, podium is all yours. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. Okay, my friends at the last benches, can you... Okay, I was one of them there. About 10 years ago, I was one of the last benches. Okay, you would have heard a lot of speakers talking about various issues of HR. I would like to keep my presentation very simple and keeping in line with what, from a perspective of a student who is just getting into an organization. just the 4 or 5 points, and then we'll see what are those areas that are impacting us. Just 4 pointers there. The first one is something called a generation cocktail. Cocktail is a word I'm sure a lot of you all will know. Okay, and everybody will deny. Okay, second one is grasping IT. We'll talk about that. The third one is diversity. And the fourth one, which I want to highlight with a little bit of shame, is half-ready HR professionals. This is something that we are seeing a lot in organizations. When I say HR professionals, I would also like to enlarge this to half-ready managers. So-called students who are passing out of MBA institutes, where is the gap between what they are learning or what they are expecting and what the organizations are expecting from them? So to begin with, let's start talking about something called the generation cocktail. What happens if you mix the wrong drinks in cocktail? Anybody? Everything goes wrong in your stomach and body, right? Similar things happen in an organization today when different generations are getting mixed up in the entire corporate setup. Traditionally, if I go, let's try and understand generation in a filmy sense. Because if I give you very, very cliche textbook definitions, I'll see, the next round of sleeping photographs will have at least 10 more. This will keep you awake. Okay. Historically, when people talk about generations, the first generation starting from 20 to 40s related to the Dilip Kumar and Raj Kapoor and movies of those era. The profile, again, most of this generation people are expected to be team players. They are supposed to be loyal to organizations, dedicated, sacrifice. They put their work before, having fun, those kind of things. We would see this in our parents or maybe our grandparents. The next generation is so-called baby bloomers, which includes the era of Amitabh Bachchan, Rajesh Khanna. Key highlights here again relate to the movies of those era. You would have things like bringing in very, very fresh perspectives. People used to not respect titles, team orientation, personal growth, sensitive to feedback. These are the traits of this generation. Now the remaining two, the so-called Gen X, the Khans. Again relate to the movies of this era. And you will get the answers for these kind of definitions here. Very goal-oriented, positive attitude, flexible working hours, give them a lot enough freedom to do it, those kind of phenomena. And the last one is Gen Y, where most of you are. I'm sure most of you all can relate to that. Confident, sociable, have different morality standards, street smart, take collective action, heroic spirit, never say die attitude, those kind of things. Now with this background, what happens in organizations when these people all combine together? Let me give you an example. If you know how to drive a car and use the same principles, will you guys be able to drive a 1960 Fiat which has a column gear shift? Then you have an Ambassador or a latest car which is called a floor shift and a F1 car. Can you use the same things? But that is what most HR professionals do. The same set of policies in the organization applies to all these people. So how do you expect it to work? Okay, before that, let's have a look at this video. Can you put a speaker in? the Gen Y is supposed to be. If you see, as the generations are shrinking, as they say, the earlier generation, the gap would be about 25, 30 years. The next generation, so-called, was 20 lesser. Now, like they said, there's a next generation taking up. Those of us who are having kids, we are realizing that in our house. It's very easier to convince your team and the organization, but very difficult to convince a 4-year-old kid at home. I'm sure all the fathers and mothers will relate to that. Sorry.
And what do you want me to give you? Right there. What do you want me to give you? What else do you want me to give you? What else do you want? Oh, all right. Let's see what you want to do with this.
For an iPad and money.
You know how to turn that thing on? Let's see here. Oh. What are you doing there? Turning it on, opening it up a little bit? What do you got there? Okay, take your fingers off so you see that. Now what are you going to do? Okay, the monkey game. Whoa. Do you like that monkey game?
That's your next generation. So if you guys are caught sleeping, like some of your friends, the next generation will take over from you faster enough. In the job and in everything else. Okay. So how are these generations different from one another, and how we as managers should be able to understand the difference and work accordingly? I don't know, is it clear enough? Okay. Let's talk about the first row. Where are these various generations found? The traditionalists usually are found in old business houses. A lot of them have retired, but there are few still in decision-making capabilities. You'll find a lot of baby bloomers in any kind of manufacturing setup. The Gen X would be there in sales and service setup, and retail and BPO is a classic example to identify with the Gen Y characters. Now, what does it has to do in terms of, let's look at a few things, attire. The traditionalists expect formals. In an organization I worked with, wearing a suit without a tie meant losing your appraisal, close to it. So very, very formal, a suit has to be worn with a tie, formal attire to work. The baby bloomers were the ones who moved to, casuals, which included trousers, maybe a bit of colorful shirts, but they would still look down upon somebody who does Friday dressing in an organization. The Gen X guys prefer casuals. Gen Y, anything that is comfortable. Now people who are fit across, people of this, of all the generations of one organization, what kind of uniform policy or a dress code policy can one make? This is where you have to think. Next, the work environment. The first two generations usually are very office time bound. The traditionalists were the 9 to 5, but the baby bloomers are somebody who like to work late hours in office. It doesn't matter to them as long as they are working. But the next two generations, they care a damn where they work from, as long as the work is done. Now, the Gen X guys still prefer office, home, sometimes. The younger generation, they can sit in a park, use a Wi-Fi, use a dongle, still be updating their mails and checking their emails. And technology has made it easier. Again, you as managers, how will you accommodate different kind of people working for you? You can't have the same set of rules for each one of them. The next one, how will you motivate these people? Just increasing salaries by 25% every year is not going to motivate all of them. Your baby bloomers may stay around saying, okay, I'm getting money. The Gen X guy will definitely move out. If he's getting only money and no job satisfaction, the person is definitely move out. And the Gen Y guys care very little about money. For them, things matter. Am I being treated right? You give I have instances where a boss promoted a guy, gave him a very good rise compared to everybody else in the organization, and like it typically happens with certain baby bloomer generation, he felt that guy owes him. So he pulled him up in front of the others in the next sales review meeting. The guy walks out. And he went and joined a company where his salary was not much higher than what he was getting. So for that kind of generation, things like work-life balance, personal egos matters very, very high. How do you mentor this kind of people? Of course, the traditionalist mentoring is not required, but I would like to focus on the Gen X and the Gen Y. Gen X people ignore feedback. So there's no point going and hitting it, and Gen Y are the ones who constantly require feedback, but doing it the right way. Talking about other things that are HR related, I would like to highlight the second last point of technology here. Others I think you can read through. The older generation used to make very limited use of computers. Today the next generation uses mobiles, laptops, and now I've got the next generation in office who are communicating with us on BBM. A lot of my colleagues, "Arey, tera team member ye nahi samajhta hai, wo nahi samajhta hai," those kind of things. So it's very important for all HR guys especially to understand your business. You might know all the things that are written in your Ashwatappas and Memorias, but how effective and what is to be used where is your common sense. And that will only come if you know your business properly when you join an organization. So don't just look at the organization from a particular job for a few months, कुछ दिन यहाँ time pass करेंगे, दूसरी नौकरी ढूंढेंगे और निकल जाएंगे. You want to a proof of the statement I am making, go to any job portal today. The CVs of management pass outs 1 to 2 years experience. There is a huge percentage hanging around there. Although most of them would be also placed from campus. So these are the things I wanted to highlight. There is no gyan in here. I have given you a perspective where I want you to think on these lines so that you can amend your thought process and actions accordingly. And before I end it up, just one presentation which is another, just one short film which is to highlight another thing. Today in the world, anything of yours can be tracked on a digital footprint. What you do on Facebook, what you do on Twitter, what photographs you are uploading, all that. And believe me, as recruiters, as HRs, we have started seeing those kind of things also. Today a lot of recruitment happens not through Naukri and Monster, but through LinkedIn, through Twitter and those kind of things. They're all interconnected. So just one example, what happens if you are having the wrong kind of digital footprints?